I think these little eggs are a great beginner project because you can practice all your basic shaping skills and you can basically practice anything you want and then make it into an egg shape, and you can call it a dragon egg or Easter egg or fairy egg. In the video I'm going to make an encased egg, so it's going to be encased with this solid color which is white, and then have all kind of multicolored dots over it, and I'm just doing these with color rods. Not doing this with frit, although you could. All you need for this is a good size rod, like this one's 10 millimeter, an encasing color. Now this one is Chinese Magic Striking White. So it starts out like that, and then it gets white when you work it. I've got North Star Ruby. I've got Dark Cobalt. Here is Banana. And a dark transparent green. Now you're going to need some 7 millimeter rods for punties, and then I'm also going to use a 4 millimeter rod for encasing my dots. The total working time for this project was about 38 minutes, so I sped all this up. But I start with a 10 millimeter rod and I'm just warming up the end of it. And then I'm going to put a coil of encasing color, just starting maybe a few inches down the rod and then all the way to the end. Now you could do stripes here, but I learned this from Sue Ellen Fowler and this is what she does, and it seems to work for me, so that's what I do. Now then, I just want to straighten this out a little bit before I start to gather it up, because it makes it a little easier if it's straight. Then I turn on my big flame and just start to gather this up. Now you could use a small flame for this, but it just takes less time. I like to use the big flame. I have it, so might as well use it. But you just gather this up and try to keep it on center. And remember, if things get floppy on you, just come out of the flame a little bit and let it center up. So then right at the end here, I let it droop a little bit so that it falls out into basically an egg shape already. So one nice thing about this project is that glass will naturally form into an egg shape just with gravity and melting. So again, it's a great beginner project for shaping skills. So now I'm just gonna punty up with a sort of cold seal here, get it on center, and then I'm gonna flame cut the 10 millimeter rod off the end. Clean that up so I can use it again later. And then I'm just going to pull a little bit of the clear glass off the egg to get it to the size I want, and just to get rid of some scuzzy glass that was there. Then I'm cooling that down on the marver because I need it just in case that last little bit with some more white. Now you could just pull the end off until a little bit of the white starts to come with it. But if you do that, you're going to get a thin spot in your encasing color. So you'll get a little hole there, which is sometimes kind of nice because it lets light into the egg. But then I'm just melting in and shaping the end a little bit before I start to come in and do my decorations. And I'm just letting gravity shape this into an egg shape. So then I come in with my first color and I'm just going to go around and randomly put dots of different sizes in random spots, leaving a little bit of space in between. And you know, I'm going to do 4 colors, so I'm trying to make each color be about 25% of the space. And it's a little bit tricky to see the difference between the green and the blue, so I do those first, and I look real carefully over the top edge of my glasses to see the difference between the colors. But just filling in sort of randomly placed dots of different sizes for those two colors. So that should be 50% of the space. Straightening out my red color a little bit there. And then more dots. Again, randomly placed, different sizes. And I want to start looking towards making these close enough together now that they're going to sort of run into each other when they melt down. And of course, you can do different patterns. You can do different colors. You can do straight patterns, organic patterns. You can make the dots really far apart so that they come out more circular. You can make them run into each other. You can make them touch each other so they sort of mix a little bit. There's a lot of things you can do here. So after I get all the dots placed, I want to melt them down just a little bit because I'm going to encase them with clear, which adds a little bit more depth, and then it also helps them spread out a little bit more because remember, I want these to run into each other. So just melting them down so I have a better surface to attach the clear. And then when I come in to do that, my punty got a little floppy, so I came out of the flame and let it center up. Remember to come out of the flame when things get too hot on you. So now I'm going in and just encasing each of the dots with a little bit of clear. And in order to help me see better which dots I've done already and which ones I haven't, I leave the dots sort of spiky as I go around with the clear. If I see a rounded head dot, then I know it hasn't been done yet. So in that way I just cover all the dots with a little bit of clear, and it's a random amount. It's not like the perfect amount to cover each dot, because I want some of them to be bigger and some of them to be smaller. If you were doing a more well-defined pattern, obviously you would want all your blobs of clear to be exactly the same size if you could. But for this pattern, that's not what I'm doing, so it makes it a little easier. So then I'm just going to go in and melt those down. And while I do this, I do try to keep the dots from melting in unevenly. So if some of them aren't melting, then you stay on them with the flame a little bit longer. But just melting in the end that is farthest away from the punty here, and I'm going to melt it in that until it's totally smooth. So it takes a little while because I want them to melt kind of slowly, and so I'm staying away from the flame, staying out a little bit, and I'm letting the flame brush over the surface instead of directing it right in the middle. So then right at the end there, I'm just using gravity a little bit to get the shape that I want, because I want this to be like the top of the egg, the small end. And then preparing my punty rod, and then I'll just cold seal on. You want that one to be a pretty good cold seal so you can knock it off later. Melt off the other rod. And then I pull this clear glass off until a little bit of the white comes with it. And then I just fill in that space with 2 more dots, whatever colors I think need to go there. And a little bit of clear. And then it's back to melting in the rest of the dots. So again, trying to melt these dots down evenly, and just the surface, and then also shaping this end of the egg. So, you know, if I want it to be fatter, then I hold it up. If I want it to be skinnier, then I let it droop down. So just melting those in smoothly and evenly. It takes a little while. So now I want to finish up this end completely. So I'm finishing up the shaping and making sure that it's totally smooth, looking at the reflection of my studio lights and the flame against the egg to make sure that that end is totally finished. And I think I had some stubborn dots that didn't want to melt down here, so just going in and getting that end really well smoothed out and finished. Okay, so then I tap that punty off, tap the egg into a marble mold, clean up the punty, and then I'm just using the marble mold to hold the egg while I pick it up with the punty and center it. So and again, you want this to be a nice cold seal so you can tap it off. And this will be the last punty. So smoothing out the middle and the end and just finishing the final shaping on the top half of the egg there. The small end. And if you look at the reflection of the light right in the middle of the egg, you can see what I'm looking at. I want that to be straight and not wobbling around as I rotate the egg. Then I just tap this off. And tilt my torch down to burn off that final punch mark there. And you gotta be careful because an egg doesn't really fit in a marble mold perfectly, so they're wobbly. Be careful when you're carrying them to the kiln. But having a marble mold is great for carrying eggs over to the kiln. And it also helps if you flip it over and stick the fat end into the marble mold. It'll be a little more stable. There you go. That's what the finished egg looks like. And the red dots didn't come in until it kiln strikes, but it looks a lot like the egg that I showed at the beginning.